Good morning again, or again to Dennis, and for the first time to Lisa.
Hi.
I'll just switch to my earphones. How are you both this morning?
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm just having a quick look to see what's changed in the Dropbox since I last looked. Not a lot, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I've not done much. I've not done anything on this one. I think because the relevant thing I've done is I've done some comments for Andy on the wicked problem. Which,
Yeah, I saw those.
So I think so. So this is so. I'd like to.
Well, we have an introduction that you and I, between us, sort of cobbled together. So we have that, but it may need some further work at some point.
Yeah.
So that's pasted into Lisa's first draft. And at the moment, when I did some work on that, I put the two bits together. So we don't have a section 10.2 at the moment. So I don't know whether people are happy with that. It seemed reasonably coherent as it was.
Yes, yeah, I agree. 7 categories makes it a bit more concise as well. 8 feels like a lot.
Well, yes, and there's not, well, I mean, there's a huge amount one could put in, but I think we've got the main points in this section, and it's about sort of comparable length with other things, perhaps a bit shorter, so we don't really want to split it up. One of the things that we were talking about earlier is the need to relate all the papers to the last special issue of Epidemics, you know, the 2015 one, that I know you've been very, very good at looking back at. But
it is eerily similar.
So I think,
but I think that's something we can put in the discussion. Like, it's in. I think it's okay to say that these are still challenges.
In the discussion, or perhaps up front in the introduction to put something of you know, what's different about what we're saying here and what picks up the same points. I mean, I don't know about this one so much, but some of the others, the previous papers were much more sort of, you know, the modelling one, for example, they were much more on detailed technical mathematical sort of points than we're picking up this time. But I haven't so much looked back at policy things because I wasn't involved in those.
Yeah, they have 6 points and 2 or 3 of them are some of ours. The only one that wasn't directly relevant was a sort of more peacetime modelling section, whereas we were looking specifically at pandemics. But yeah, a lot of their challenges are still challenges.
Morning, everyone. I'm just going to nip off for 30 seconds and get a cup of tea, and then I'll be back through.
Okay.
Highly recommended.
Morning, Duncan.
Morning, hi.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Good, good.
So is Windows user Windows user, is that Chris? Somebody's sort of got comments that
That might be me. Not
I think it's either Chris or Duncan. I couldn't figure it out.
I was just wondering which of them
Right.
it was.
Yeah. We can blame each other.
No, I think it's probably Duncan, because I can see comments from Chris identified as such, or one anyway. Morning, Ben.
Hello.
Right. Just to flag this week, I have another meeting at 11, so I'll need to leave then.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that will be.
Also, one other thing. I mean, this would be relevant to Peter or his colleagues possibly as well if he's able to come. But I think I wrote a couple of weeks ago about a seminar series at Edinburgh where I'd been invited to speak, and where we're looking for a sort of twin for me, either for panel discussion or for giving a talk. So if anyone is interested in that, then just you can let me know offline. We actually had initial interest from sorry, not more than interest. It's essentially an acceptance from Scottish government via their chief statistician, which was looking very good. And then he realised that this was part of a series called Controversies in the Data Society, and decided that this was something where Scottish government could not currently talk about the pandemic, which was a bit which is slightly unfortunate, but it looks as if it'll be on COVID hard to find people outside the research community for that kind of banner.
Yeah. Okay. Should we make a start, and then the others can join when they're able? So, what stage are we at with the draft? I know I still want to add some things to my sections. I think we've sort of had a bit of a discussion about each section, and then in the last couple of minutes last week, Duncan jotted down some recommendations for us. So maybe we want to talk about that today. So the timeline that we're aiming for. So all the papers are aiming to be submitted at the end of March, and we'd quite like to share with our friendly experts pretty soon so that they have time to review it. So depending on how far we think we can get today, my plan is to send it out probably on Monday.
Mhm.
And then that gives our fellow IDP members, that gives them 3 full weeks to look at it, which hopefully they should have some time to do that. And then my proposal was to commence our discussions after that, so on the 2nd of March.
Who? Sorry, I've forgotten. Who are the friendly people that you're sending it out to?
Yeah, so I was going to check this with you. We made a list a while back.
I think we had people like Frank Kelly, didn't we? But I can't remember who else.
Yeah, so let me know whether these people are yes or no, but these are the people we've jotted down. So Chris Dye. Yeah. Bernard Silverman. Frank Kelly.
Yeah.
Julia Gog.
Yeah, she's got time. Yeah, I mean, all of them is that
Yeah.
proviso, but particularly Julia, I suppose.
Yeah. And then Dennis also said Graham Medley.
Yes, I don't know whether he's, yes, I mean, for anything really. I mean, Graham has said he would look at things and comment. I was thinking perhaps more for modelling than
Okay.
for this one, but
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we should toss in that we've had an offer which we've gratefully accepted from Hans Hesterbeek to look at all the papers. I don't know if you all know Hans. Chris and Duncan may not.
Runs the epidemics paper, doesn't he?
He used to be editor-in-chief of the epidemics journal. He was the main editor, I think, of the last issue, the 2015 series, special issue, and so on. And because he hasn't been very much involved in writing, he suggested that his involvement might be best put at looking at all the papers as a sort of independent, critical, internal reviewer. So making suggestions from the perspective of, you know, an editor as much as anything, but looking across all the papers. And we thought that would be a really helpful thing. So he will also look at them at some stage, depending on when we want that. And I don't know when you think that might best fit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, another person I could run it by is Gordon Masterton, who's Professor of Future Infrastructure at the University of Edinburgh. So he's not very specifically a COVID person, but he's been involved for a long time in sort of government advice in a similar way to people like Frank. So, but he's also quite likely to agree on comments because it links to a current discussion we're having about opportunities at Edinburgh. So it's likely to interest him from that perspective.
I guess what we're looking for with all these people is challenges that either they don't think are challenges anymore for one reason or another, or more likely things that we've missed or other points that are important to.
Yeah. Well, I think also about the kind of advice both on content and framing from people who've been directly involved on that high level policy interface, which is why I thought obviously that's something where Frank and Bernard have both been CSAs. I don't know all of the others, but that's where I was thinking of Gordon as well.
Mm-hmm.
What was the surname?
Masterton, Masterton. And of course, we also want people who will say yes, which is a very important criterion.
And then there were two more names that we popped down. John Edmonds. I don't know if he's shown interest or that you know of.
Not specifically. I mean, I've had conversations with Graham. I haven't had them with John. Again, one might think about him more from the sort of modelling and I mean, all these people, they're on Sage, so they're very much involved, and it's just I suppose we might want to think about where we can use them best, because we probably can't ask them to do too many of these papers, and certainly the ones that are particularly involved with policy we should concentrate on, I suspect. But
okay, so maybe not John for this one. And then the last name was Hannah Clapham was very interested, but she hasn't been able to make lots of the meetings. So I thought it might be nice to involve her as well. Yeah. Okay.
So you'll send it out to a whole lot of them. And
that's what I was thinking. I didn't know if you wanted to do initial introduction or if it's fine to just come straight from me.
Oh, I think it's fine to come from, at least for all the people that are involved in IDP. They'll know about it anyway, won't they? You might need a bit more explanation from one or two of the others, I suppose.
Yeah, I think with Gordon, I'd probably better contact him in first instance.
Yeah. Yes, that would be another way to do it. Are you imagining, in what state are you planning to send it? I mean, you were talking about next week, which is quite soon. Feels soon anyway.
That was why it was a tentative suggestion.
I mean, we probably ought to have an introduction that it would at least set the context of the paper, even if it's not a sort of complete polished thing. I mean, if you don't have that, then you're going to be trying to explain much more in a letter, aren't you? It's sort of an accompanying letter, but again, if there's a reasonable context in the introduction, that would go a long way too.
Yeah, okay.
Help.
And do you think we need to include all the references that we're intending to include?
I don't know.
So I will add them to my section anyway before I send it off, but I don't know where we're at with others.
No, I don't know where we're at all with references. Have we got? I mean, there's references and there's cross references between things too, but.
Do we just need to put our bits reference in the document? I mean, just at the end.
That would probably be helpful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I can add a references section.
I'm just trying to.
So, I mean, maybe it's for everyone go through their sections and basically make it English. Tidy it up, put the references at the end, and just make it. That doesn't do anything with the introduction or conclusion, though, I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to references, are we it's probably just worth thinking, are we definitely going to write this in Word on Dropbox? We just ought to, just before doing much on references, think whether we're going to use any referencing package, or whether we're going to actually write the final version in LaTeX or on Overleaf or whatever.
I thought for sending it to others, it might be easiest to keep it in a sort of Word format, so that we can pop it on like a Google Drive or Dropbox or something where they can kind of easily edit, rather than sort of asking them to read. Although I guess we could.
Yeah, we
I
probably
don't know to learn it either.
So
yeah, we're probably not ask. I'd have thought we might be asking these people to comment rather than edit.
yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
For the submission, I think, as far as I can see, we can submit it as a Word document or as a PDF, and then sort of worry about getting it into the right style.
Yeah.
At a later stage. So I mean, either route is possible.
So for this report, there'll be no problem with the actual text doing it in any format, because there are no equations and there's not a lot of internal referencing. But it's just that if we have a significant number of references, that can be a bit of a nightmare unless you do it in some. If you need to order them properly and so on, that can be a bit of a nightmare for whoever ends up sorting that out, unless it's unless you use some kind of referencing package. Just say I've also made a note to myself to actually have a proper look at this full document sometime later today. Like the last few days have been a bit of a nightmare.
So we should get rid of all the comments, or I mean, sort of act upon the comments, or whatever, I guess. Do you think we should put the whole thing into a LaTeX document of some sort, so that, I mean, would that,
from my point of view, that I would find that difficult to edit, just because I have avoided LaTeX in my career.
Okay.
I haven't used it in ages either.
I was naturally thinking that if with something other than Newton Institute, this is the new interdisciplinary era of the Newton Institute, of course. So
ASCII text files, right? Let's sit there.
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, ASCII, getting emailed ASCII text files which don't have the standard carriage return character. That's all. That's something that happens quite often, actually, in math circles. But it's just something to think about. If we're not going to have, if we're going to have a limited number of references, no problem. If they're going to be quite a lot, then it can be difficult to manage.
yeah, I was just going to ask, I mean, how many, does anybody have any feeling, Lisa, do you have any feeling about how many references we're likely to have in this?
30, I guess.
I feel like at least in my sections, I need probably one per paragraph, because otherwise it's just not very supported. It just feels too much of an opinion piece without it. I think, I'm not sure if that's the same for some of the other sections.
But I mean, if we're just editing a document, we can all use the same epidemic style, and hopefully it shouldn't be too bad. It's just one paper, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll stay with the Word setup for now, and I can mess about with the references. if you want to send them over or add them if you're able to. I'll add a references section first. Okay. So maybe we want one more week on this. So perhaps one brief discussion next week, which hopefully we're all happy with our sections and added in sort of whatever we want to reference. And then the other thing would be the introduction. Valerie, do we think we want to send off some kind of discussion conclusion section as well? Sort of how complete are we kind of aiming?
I think I don't think it needs to be complete. It needs, I mean, if we're asking people to read it, it needs to be reasonably sort of, you know, easy for them to read. And I do think we need at least to tell them the context of the paper. I mean, some will know, but some won't. And I think we're going to have to write some sort of introduction which gives the context. I mean, I don't think, perhaps, I'm not sure that it matters too much whether it's done and all beautifully written before you send it out, as long as we've got a sort of an outline of what's going in there, you know, in terms of, even if it's only a few sentences saying, you know, what it's going to relate to. But I think especially for the people that haven't been involved very much in IDP, be very useful to have that context, because otherwise you're just going to have to write it anyway.
That's true.
And I think it's important to get that balance right between having something in a reasonably okay polished form and actually getting in comments early enough for them to be useful. And I think usually it's a good idea to send it out. It's a good signal to be sending it out before one's completely comfortable doing so.
Yeah. Well, I think we agree with that, and I certainly think we need to emphasize that the point of doing this is to do it at a stage when there's still lots of scope for changing things, for adding new challenges, or, you know, changing the sort of emphasis of bits if there's a strong case for doing that. That what we'd be sending wouldn't be sort of set in stone. We really do want constructive comments on it.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. So maybe if we sort of set ourselves a deadline of Tuesday being the last day for edits, and we can have a sort of discussion and any final bits, and then I aim to send it off at the end of day on Tuesday, unless we meet in the morning and decide we're nowhere near ready. But if we aim for that.
So what do you want us to, I mean, what document should we work on to do the final editing?
So the last edited one called 10 First Draft, which has all the sections together.
Yeah, but do you want us to make our changes directly onto that? Or
I guess,
I mean, if we're all working on different sections, that ought to be okay. But
feel free to work on it and then copy and paste it in. Or if you know other people are working on it, maybe send me an email and I can just sew it all together on Tuesday morning, whichever's easiest, I guess. But if I think it's nice to have it as all together. Okay, so maybe we want to talk about introduction a bit now, and I also want to talk about diagrams a bit.
I think what I've failed to do is I think I'd offer to write something towards the introduction, in particular to say a little bit about politics, because really I think it was originally called Politics and Policy, and it's pretty much all policy, and I think one at least wants to explain that. and I think I've got some ideas for that, having written these notes for Andy on the wicked problem stuff. So so what I thought I'll try and do before next week is to maybe I'll start off with a 10.0 and sort of put some things. So if you see a 10.0, everyone's very welcome to look at it and comment on it. But if it looks reasonably coherent, I'll copy it into your main draft, nearer the time. If that's okay.
That would be, yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Dennis.
But other people have ideas of what they would like covered in the introduction.
I think mainly this context and how it relates to previous things, particularly the previous issue.
Yeah.
Would be good.
I think we might also just want to mention that we are talking from a modeler's point of view.
Yes.
So we can sort of,
yes, that's important.
the points we're making about policy are from the modeler's point of view.
Yeah.
And I think that also comes into the explanation of why we're not saying much about politics.
Yeah.
Do we want, at the moment it's called politics and policy, which is just how I think Dennis divided up the topics, way back when. Is that the title we want?
I think it's policy, isn't it, really, rather than the politics?
Yeah.
I think the title. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think the way it's gone, the title should just be policy, but the introduction should explain why politics isn't there, because there's a limited amount modelers can say about politics.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think I'd feel happier if it was just the title was just something, I don't know, challenges for policy or something.
Do we want to say modelling and policy, or are the 10 papers all modelling?
I think everything is sort of. I mean, I think the overall introduction of the volume is going to say it's a
modelling series,
largely from a modelling point of view. And insofar it's got people who perhaps wouldn't call themselves modelers, they're from sort of other scientific and mathematical disciplines rather than being politics. Morning, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Good morning. Sorry, I was teaching.
So for reference, the 2015 paper was called 6 Challenges in Modelling for Public Health Policy.
Yeah.
Do we sorry,
but we don't want to copy it, I guess.
No. Is it public health policy that we're talking about, or are we dealing more widely?
I don't think it's really public health policy, is it? It's no.
Don't think
that's
so.
Almost the criticism of the modelling, is it hasn't really been much to do with public health. So it's more epidemic modelling, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, but I think all was being mentioned there essentially is which of the 2015 papers is most closely related to this. So, and I think it's rather than go. So I don't think one needs to worry about the title of that paper. Then I think it's more a question of picking up the points made there and seeing how they relate to what we're saying.
Oh, I think that's right. But I think it was useful to know what that title was, and to think, I mean, if we're dropping the politics from our title, and presumably first draft will disappear at some point, then we only have paper 10 policy left. And the question is really, is it, do we just want to call it policy? If we say challenges for policy, that doesn't seem quite right, because we're coming from a particular perspective. Or is it policy, or is it policy makers, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe it does have to say something like interaction of models and policy.
Yeah, that's nice, interaction.
Yeah.
Do we want to
I
put
think-
in epidemic or pandemic? So that's the sort of key change from the 2015 one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, you could say interaction of models and policy for pandemic control or something.
That's
Off the top
nice.
of my- I very
Glad
much- I
you
very
came,
much teach
Peter.
today.
You're obviously, fired up having done your teaching.
What teaching does you?
Relaxed and not teaching anymore.
Can you say it again? What exactly did you just say?
Oh gosh, interaction of models and policy for pandemic control.
Pandemic control, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah, pandemic control.
Models.
I think that's really what we're talking about, is how do we use models to guide policy in the area of trying to control the pandemic?
Mhm.
No, I think that's good. I mean, we can always sort of modify it later, but it does at least set the tone of what we're
Yeah.
what we're trying to do.
Or if
Yeah,
you just
10
put
first
something like
draft.
the role of models in pandemic control.
Oh yeah, quite like that.
Sorry, what are you suggesting, Dennis? Where does the policy?
Well, it doesn't have the word policy in it. I'm just wondering if that matters.
I mean, the role of modelling is throughout all the
Yeah.
challenges, isn't it? I mean, you could say every one of the challenges papers would come under that title.
Nice though.
Yeah.
Well, you just say models and policy in pandemic.
Yeah.
See. Models
I
and
quite
policy
like
in
the
pandemic.
interaction actually, because it implies that they're sort of we're not just dealing with them as two separate things, but actually how they.
I think interaction is very important, because that's kind of what we're saying, is that, you know, they need to go both ways, and one shouldn't necessarily be subservient to the other. They should be symbiotic, really. So interaction.
Well, okay, well then the interaction of models and policy in pandemic control.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's in or for pandemic control, but
I think it's in. I think. Anyway, we can think about it, but
Okay.
I'm always in favour of shorter rather than longer titles. So if anyone can think of a way of
get all the words in there for the index. The index.
I think it shouldn't be longer than that, but anyway, we
I think
can.
that's fine.
Yeah, that's good. Much more informative than 10 first draft, which is what it's currently. I'll make sure to change that. Okay. So Dennis is going to have a go at the an introduction at some point.
And we're going to put references in at the end.
In our section.
And
add a references section.
What about Duncan's discussion points at the end?
Yes.
I mean, we could just leave those for the moment. As I say, I don't think everything needs to be totally written.
Or do you just want me to put some words around that? I mean, I'm not focused on the content. It's just to try and make it coherent in terms of a sentence.
Yeah, that would be great if you don't mind.
And are we thinking about this as the discussion section or as a recommendations section? Or I'm just wondering what you know, is it a sort of concluding discussion? Or is it?
I think I was envisaging a concluding discussion. Maybe a few, we could even leave it as bullet points, sort of, and then a few paragraphs to kind of discuss and conclude, is what I was thinking.
So if people want to put things in that section, you can just put them in as bullet points or notes, and I can make some text around them if that would help.
That would be great. Yeah, thanks.
I guess we should just look through our own section.
Yeah, exactly.
See if there are any more
Yeah,
obvious points that need to be picked up again.
exactly. Yeah. So if you put them in, and I'll look at this on, I don't know, on Monday, for example, once everybody's put what they want in that concluding section in there, and I can try and make it.
Peter, just to add in, our bold aim is to send it off to a few other Isaac Newton members who have a bit more sort of direct experience at the end of the day next Tuesday. So we'll have one more sort of discussion. Unless
Okay,
we...
That's good.
Unless we...
so I'll do that.
Yeah. Assuming we don't all meet on Tuesday and decide there's significant problems, but that's the optimistic plan. Okay, great. And then I wondered what our views are on diagrams and sort of figures.
Have you got some particular suggestions of where diagrams or figures would be useful?
So, yeah, so I was just talking with a few sort of other colleagues from biochemistry, actually. And I don't know if I can share screen. So
I think you should be able to. There
we go, yeah. So I was just sort of explaining that this is a kind of interesting paper in that we're sort of looking at the challenges, and it's a bit sort of more like a kind of comment or opinion piece rather than a kind of technical paper. And a friend recommended this paper called The Hallmarks of Cancer. So I think if you're not in biology, you wouldn't have heard of it. But it was a very sort of influential paper in the biology field in year 2000, where a group of researchers try to sort of define the field of cancer and kind of define all the challenges and sort of neatly write down how, like, everything that had been done, and sort of a big kind of review type thing, but in a way that no one had really been able to do before. So like, I don't know any of the science, but this one diagram here was really influential in just that it was like a really nice, simple sort of pictorial diagram of the kind of key, I think these are capabilities of cancer, yeah. So they'd sort of split it up into 6 kind of key things with this sort of, what I would describe as like a little cartoon kind of icon thing. And that was a very kind of nice way to describe something that hadn't really been done before.
And are these those sections, are they basically the titles of the sections in the paper? Is that essentially it, or more processing going on?
I think they mostly are, or they're sort of the 6 key things that they're talking about in the paper. So we could do something like this. I think we're in a, well, Valerie and Dennis can comment, but I think we're in a unique position where we might be able to do these sorts of diagrams, whereas in a more technical paper, it wouldn't be as appropriate to do this kind of sort of colloquial depiction thing.
I mean, I'm very keen on that, because you know, it's the communication of it rather than it just becoming yet another paper on COVID, if you like. So yeah. I'm for that in terms of if we want to get this across.
So I had a go.
Great. Even better.
Oh, and there's this other diagram.
Oh, right, okay, that's a bit too much.
Yeah, so this was another like great diagram, in that they'd managed to write down like what I understand.
That is cancer,
everything.
right?
Yeah.
All in one diagram.
Almost everything.
Yeah.
And then everything in red is like the things that they know about or whatever. Right. So you could just sort of look at that and figure out, you know, what had not been covered.
There's your PhD.
So I just thought it was yeah. So obviously we won't do something like this, but we might want to do something like this. So yeah, it was just an example of they define. I think they even defined this term hallmarks in, you know, as sort of, I guess, challenges and things. And it actually had 35,000 citations, and they did an update in 2011 which had 50,000 citations. So it's sort of really popular in the field, mostly because of this kind of nice way of depicting things. I had to go with some, to be honest, I got a bit carried away. So here was my attempt at a similar kind of
Excellent.
thing, I think.
Wow.
So
That's
if we,
really good.
You'll notice that there are 8 sections because I miscounted. So I've just put back in number 2, mostly because it annoyed me that there was an empty one. But we would have 7 sections on ours. Obviously, like, I've just copied the design exactly. So we would want something, either a different shape, like a bit different, or we would want to kind of reference this paper. So we're not copying. But I was thinking something like this, where we're able to say, like, these are the, well, 7 or 8 sort of key, what we see as the challenges, with maybe kind of little pictorial images, so it's sort of easy to see, maybe a color for everything, and then kind of using our numbering. And a friend said, like, you could even hyperlink them, so you click on one and it goes to sort of section 1 of the paper. And then in the middle I wanted like some kind of icon or drawing of like one epidemiologist and one policymaker, but I couldn't.
Right.
I didn't back my drawing of that.
Well,
Yeah.
my suggestion is of a sort of devilish figure representing politics in the middle.
Yeah, it's a
Andy's
bit
colleague,
like
I believe, is what
Sitting there trying to confuse and muddle all the bits outside.
yeah,
So,
it's a bit like
maybe on one side, I don't know, scientists, policymaker, both having microscopes, or, you know,
Yes.
It sounds a bit.
in the middle.
It sounds a bit like. Reminds me of the quote I used in lecture that I recorded last week, which it starts off: the simplest, non-abusive definition of economics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that sounds a good. Well, you know, do we want these? In the diagram, do we want the? I guess we want these people happily coexisting, or, you know, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the graphic is that we can have that if this is implemented, they can actually have a physical cup of coffee together.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think we want a happy scene.
That looks really good. Excellent. And
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I think that what you put in the middle is slightly problematic. I mean, it would be good if we had something, you know, I was thinking of the, you know, the woodcut of the plague doctor in the, I don't know which century it is, but way back.
Plague doctor.
Yeah. You know, Duncan obviously.
Yes. I've Googled it. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, that one. You know, if we had, so that's the sort of the something.
But I still think something representing politics, or possibly, since it's a circle, something sort of representing a globe with.
Well, you've got the
globe with lots of where you can see that all the countries are doing different things in some way, or something like that. You know, just so.
We've got the globe there under the International Corporation. I really like your little symbols. I think they're wonderful.
I copied them. I didn't just free draw. So,
but
for example, I did a bit of
International Corporation.
Oh,
Could be more like a sort of interaction. Could be more like a sort of network symbol, though.
Yeah. So these are just a few that I kind of found on the internet and tried to draw out.
But I think.
Do we have access to someone for? Do we have access to someone for preparing these kinds of diagrams? Because I once had a PhD. He was a very talented cartoonist and used to draw his own cartoons for illustrating decentralized control.
I like Lisa's style of.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah.
I was desperately hoping that one of you might say you knew someone who might be able to digitalize this for us, because
that's what I mean. The style is very good. It's it's typesetting.
Is it some sort of little cartoon in the middle that brought together the, you know, the policymakers and with the modelers?
Exactly.
I'm still pushing the idea of it being the world, and could you have a world in which in some simplified way, you know, the pandemic is starting somewhere and arrows take it to different countries, and somehow in some simplified cartoon way you represent the different things are happening in all the different countries. There must be some sort of simple diagram that would give that impression.
Well, I would also add that you might want to have something, Dennis, in the introduction to the whole issue. Some sort of diagram might be quite nice.
Yes.
So one might think about something like that there, perhaps.
Well, yes, perhaps one might have some global cartoon there. Yeah.
But here we somehow need to get the policy into it a bit more.
But I couldn't decide what a politician would look like and
Well,
how I would
exactly.
draw an
You get into
epidemiologist.
stereotypes of politicians and scientists, which aren't necessarily, but you know, I suppose
Well, we I don't know. I suppose one could have a cartoon of the three amigos of Boris, Chris Whitty,
exactly.
and Well, actually, for a presentation, that would. I'm not sure for a formal paper, but for a presentation, that actually. Boris, Chris Whitty, and Patrick Vallance, that kind of illustration would be very good.
Yeah, I think it's probably, I agree, and for a presentation it would be great. For the paper where we're thinking of a more international readership, it's probably less appropriate. But a UK audience would would appreciate it.
So I mean, there are sort of, you know, if you just look for a politician icon, you know, on Google, it comes up with a few people of, you know, the same sort of style of people looking like politicians, and probably scientists as well.
Yeah.
And you could have them sort of both, I don't know, looking at something in the middle, looking at the problem together, rather than, you know, maybe through two different lenses. You know,
that's a nice idea. Yeah.
So we're seeing that. I mean, we're both. I mean, the politicians and the modelers are looking at the same problem, if you think, in the middle, but through, you know, figuratively different lenses, and you can actually have the, you know, people looking through lenses, and it looks very different to both of them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a nice idea. I thought about that. I've decided that I'd drawn enough, though. I didn't.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't think I could draw that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I suppose the other thing with these
fine.
icons is some of them are sort of copyright, aren't they? That's the site.
Yeah. Those are all copied, so we'd have to adjust them all so that
okay,
we're not copying anyone. Yeah.
Some are royalty free, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we couldn't use exactly those, but I'm sure a small adjustment would be fine. Yeah, so that was just a first try. I thought if I drew it, it would we could then see what it looked like. So that kind of thing I think would be nice for the introduction. And then I wonder if we might be able to do some other cartoon type thing for each of the sections. How ambitious that might be.
Well, maybe you know, just in terms of, I mean, it's more a sort of presentation of the paper, isn't it? You could just have your icon from your diagram as the you know, next to the title of the section. But you know, whether whether the journal likes that or not, I don't know.
I've no idea. I mean, in the discussions we've had, they've been extremely flexible about things. So hopefully that would continue. But we didn't talk about diagrams or sort of artwork in general at all.
Yeah. We can see, but I just thought this might be a sort of unique opportunity where
Absolutely, yeah.
it's more appropriate than the normal.
Yeah.
What happens about, I mean, given it's all digital, open access, all the rest of it, I mean, presumably you can have colour these days. You know, one thinks back to days of hard copy journals where colour diagrams were. Presumably that's not an issue, is it? Does anybody know?
No, I think it's
Normally
fine.
you
No, I
have
don't-
to pay additional fees if you want colour in the printed version. But
Yeah.
you can usually get them. The online version is usually free.
So we should be able to do
You should
do
be
it.
able to, yeah.
Yeah.
Or it'll be
It
covered
makes a
in
lot-
open access charges as well. If I'm not sure what the intention is from that perspective, but
Well,
if
it's
we
an
go
open
down the open
access journal, so
in that case, yeah, it would naturally be
yeah.
available anyway.
I mean, that was one of the strong selling points for us, that we wanted it to all to be open access. Because the colour makes a lot of difference in the diagram that you've done, doesn't it? So.
Okay, so okay, we can have about a think about that. Chris, did you say you knew someone that might be able to digitalize?
No. I was just saying. I thought it was. It would be a good idea. I mean, it might be useful just to drop a note to the Newton Gateway, because I'm not. I know they tend to, when they do produce print things, they'll want them to be well presented, but I don't know. I don't know for sure whether they'd have access to this kind of service.
Okay.
Oh yes, I've no idea.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to have to leave for my other meeting now, so I'll definitely have a look through this afternoon. My diary's not too bad after the last few days. Just one thing, Pete, because you weren't on the call yet when I said this before, was we still have an opportunity if anyone, or if you have a colleague who would like to speak in our controversies on the data society, controversies in the data society series at Edinburgh, as a kind of pair with a talk that I'm giving. So if there's anyone in your collaboration at Exeter who might be interested,
I'll have a thought. And
please let me know. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. Anyway, I'll see you next
Thank you.
week, and I'll let you know when I've made some edits and comments.
That's great. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Okay, so is there anything else we want to discuss today?
Should probably maybe drop Carrie a line, or put something in the Slack just to say what we've decided, so that I mean, there's a bit on her section, and probably a few references and the comments to be removed and so on.
Yeah, good idea.
So would you think of just renumbering them all, then, or just shut down one in numbering?
I think, yeah. Yes, I think it would be confusing if we don't.
I don't think we can leave it like this.
Yeah. I quite like it because I know the numbers of my ones, but anyway.
Well, but it can be done at
I'll change
absolutely the last minute when everything else is done.
Yeah.
But I think if we send it out to anybody with a 10.2 missing, they might get a little confused.
Yes. I'll change it at the last minute. Yeah.
So you change the numbering now?
No, at the last minute. So because Lisa knows, everybody knows the numbering of their own sections.
Oh,
I think I
right.
know all the numbers. But yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
now might be the point to change.
I'll leave it as it is. and then-
Change. How stuck in the mud are we?
Sorry?
Bill.
I don't think it's a problem anyway. I can,
Oh, on that point, are we happy with the section titles? Do we want to make any alterations to that? Because I just gave them sort of quick titles from the Excel spreadsheet, so we might want some adjustment. On making the diagram, I realized that 10.4 has an extremely long name, so we might want to change that.
it could be just, I suppose it could be modelers and the decision-making process. It's not quite the same, but it sort of implies integration in some, or at least togetherness. Or but I mean, you could leave it as it is, but then in your diagram, just shorten it to integration or something.
Ah, that's a good idea. Yes, that's true.
Because the longish titles are quite informative, aren't they, on these sections? I mean, 10.5 has a fairly long one too. But that could just be communication, but the brackety bit does add. I think it's quite helpful.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we're happy with them.
In 10.6, would you keep understanding? I mean, you could just call it competing factors.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Was that obvious to you what I meant by competing factors? Sort of economics and social science and things like that.
Well, I think so, but you could in that first paragraph, you could expand that slightly. Because your second sentence is talking about, you know, issues for modelers. But my immediate reaction was more in terms of competing factors, in terms of, you know, well, economics versus health, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah, I'll rewrite that to sort of cover everything. Okay. Ben and Peter, are you happy with the technical model challenges as a title?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. So.
That describes it very well.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anything anyone else would like to discuss today, or are we happy to go ahead and
we've all
finish
got
up
our
our
jobs.
bits? Yeah. Okay, so we'll meet again next Tuesday, and hopefully we'll have everything we want.
A wonderful finished draft by then.
Yeah. I thought after that we might be able to have a few weeks break whilst we wait for comments, so that we can all catch up with our actual day jobs. I think my PhD supervisor would approve of that. Okay, So yeah, let's meet on Tuesday and
Thank you.
see where we are.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.